one tax cut. Every study shows that child care is cutting poverty in half by 40%. Families with children who qualify for this, it cuts poverty by 40%. So let's extend the tax cut at least through 2025. And let's expand free meals for millions more children in school. With the assistance during the summer months when they don't have access to those school meals. We support families with children. We also need to provide greater dignity for our nation's senior citizens who care for them. Look, there are hundreds of thousands of older adults and people with disabilities who need home and community-based care services. They qualify for it under Medicaid, but there's a backlog of thousands of people. But one study showed that $3,000 spent helping a senior stay in their home by providing, it saves the country more than $20,000 a year in medical cost. At the same time, more than 1.5 million Americans work in home care. They're disproportionately women, women of color, and immigrants, and those jobs are among the lowest paid in the economy. 1 in 6 home care workers lives in poverty. We need to do better on both sides of the equation. My plan expands home care for the older and disabled Americans while improving jobs and pay for home care workers who care for them. And here's the deal. You save a lot of money if you don't have to go to a home. Keeping people in their own home, mentally and every other way, is a benefit, a significant benefit for the community as well as cost. We also need to continue to make health care more affordable. When we lowered premiums and expanded coverage for the my American Rescue Plan, more than 1.5 million people signed up for what used to be called Obamacare. I want to make these premium reductions permanent so we can get even more people covered. We need to deal with a shortage of affordable housing in America. Over 10 million renters in this country pay more than half their income for the rent on their apartment. And the lack of affordable housing prevents people from moving to communities where there are more opportunities. So we're going to make historic investment in affordable housing, increasing and improving the housing supply by building and rehabilitating more than 2 million homes, especially in places that need more housing. And we need to invest not just in the physical and human infrastructure of today. We need to invest in jobs in the industries of tomorrow. 3 decades ago, and this always disturbs me, even just repeating it. 3 decades ago, the United States was #1 in the world for a share of their GDP being invested in research and development. We were #1 in the world. We're now #8 in the world. #8 in the world. China was China was #9 in the world. Now they're #2 in the world. Folks, Democrats and Republicans agree we can't afford to lose this race. They came together in the Senate in an Innovation and Competition Act that Dick was very much a part of to help us grow the industries that win the jobs of the future. We need to lay the foundation for the next generation of American jobs and American leadership in manufacturing and technology. We're going to invest in historic black colleges and universities under minority-serving institutions because while these schools may not have the endowments or the labs needed to generate these jobs, these students are just as capable of learning about all the things that are going to provide the jobs of the future. And of course, no challenge is as urgent as climate change. Last week, I met with 8 governors for a better part of an hour, all from the western states, Republicans and Democrats. They're facing extreme heat, record drought, and a fire season that threatens to be much longer, more dangerous, and more destructive than ever. Last year, for example, more than 10 million acres burned in the West. 10 million acres, not counting the lives lost and homes lost. More land that exists in my home state of Delaware and my neighboring state of Maryland combined. So if a fire swept through and took out every single thing in the state of Delaware and Maryland. The drought conditions this year are twice as bad. You've seen the pictures. Reservoirs that are 40 feet down, 50 feet down. The extreme weather isn't just in the West. In Illinois, farmers downstate are dealing with more frequent droughts. And 2 weeks ago, just south of here, you just had a nearly unprecedented tornado. We can't wait any longer to deal with climate crisis. We see it with our own eyes, and it's time to act. The bipartisan agreement we reached makes some major strides. It's going to allow the transition of thousands of old, for example, diesel school buses and buses, city buses. We're going to change them to electric buses. There are roughly 500,000 of these iconic yellow school buses on the road today. 95% of them run on diesel, for example. And diesel pollutes the air and is linked to asthma and other health problems and hurts our communities and causes our students to miss school. I'll put Americans to work capping tens of thousands of abandoned oil and gas wells that are leaking methane. It's devastating. And the wages to cap these wells are the same wages it took to dig the wells, making people be able to earn a prevailing wage to do it. There's thousands of them. But we need to go further. I want to provide tax cuts for businesses and consumers who invest in clean energy technologies like renewables, battery storage, next-generation aviation fuels, electric vehicles. I want to set a clean electric standard that moves us to a fully clean and reliable grid. These steps are going to create good-paying union jobs and spur demand for domestic manufacturing, accelerating clean energy and clean cars, growing our capacity to build those technologies on factory floors with union workers here in the United States. And we create a new generation of jobs in clean energy manufacturing. I also want to enlist a new generation of climate conservation and resilience workers, like FDR did when the American Work Plan for preserving our landscape with the Civilian Conservation Corps. It's a similar thing. We can put Americans to work strengthening public lands and waters and making our communities, rural and urban, more resilient against extreme weather. And we can take on the long overdue work of advancing environmental justice by addressing pollution. My plan is also going to give grants to spur innovative policies and land projects, local projects like installing community solar and storage and disadvantaged communities, replacing street lights that are made in America with LED bulbs that cost a whole lot less and last a whole lot longer, making upgrades in homes and school and community centers to boost energy efficiency and cut electric bills. Folks, I've laid a lot of plans here, but that's because it's time we have to think bigger, we have to act bolder, and we have to build back better. When we passed the American Rescue Plan, the naysayers, the doubters said it wouldn't work. Well, we created over 3 million jobs since I took office. More jobs in the first months of a presidential administration than any time in American history. And last week, the Congressional Budget Office doubled their projections of the 2021 economic growth from 3.2% to 7.4%. And the OECD thinks it could be higher. That puts America Rescue Plan, and our work is going to move forward to do a lot of things, including we're close to defeating the virus. The last time the economy grew at this rate was in 1984, and Ronald Reagan was telling us it was an American morning. Well, this is going to be an American century. With my American Families Plan and the other elements of the Build Back Better agenda, experts in Wall Street, analysts have said that we'll create millions of good-paying jobs for years and decades to come, not just in the near term. So I'm going to be making the case to the American people until the job is done, until we bring this bipartisan deal home, until we meet the needs of families today and the economy of tomorrow, and we can pay for it. Let me give you a rough example. This isn't, by the way, the plan for infrastructure is paid for. It's paid for. And this plan that I'm talking about, which is really expensive if you add it all up, well, guess what? The fact is that it's paid for as well. And let me tell you how we're going to pay for it. Some of the ways to pay for the rest of it is the last couple of years, for example, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies making billions of dollars did not pay a single penny in taxes, not one single cent. Well, I don't want to punish anybody, but everybody, and I hope someday my grandchildren grow up to be billionaires. That'd be wonderful, especially for a guy who for 36 years was listed as the poorest man in the United States Congress. But having said that, all kidding aside, everybody has to pay their fair share. I'm not trying to gouge anybody. Everybody just get in the game. If we put in place a minimum 15% tax on the profits of corporations, the ones that didn't pay any tax, that would raise $250 billion, $240 billion. There's a loophole in the system called stepped-up basis. That loophole goes that if I made a capital gains and I was a wealthy person and I was going to cash in my stock and I was going to have to pay a tax, I was going to make, $400,000 and I was going to pay X amount in taxes. If on the way to cash it in, I get hit by a truck, God forbid, and died, and I was left to my daughter, there'd be no tax paid. It's not an inheritance tax. It was a tax due 10 seconds earlier. We close that loophole, that saves us $400 billion a year. Not a year, $400 billion over this period, which is enough to pay for the child care tax credit. If we end tax breaks for fossil fuels and make polluters pay to clean up the messes they've made, that would raise $90 billion. I'm not asking them to do anything that is unfair. Just not going to subsidize them anymore. They're doing well, thank you. And the messes they made, they should clean up. Well, if we ask the top 1%, and I hope many of you are in the top 1%, maybe. You know, that tax cut that was passed in 2017 was all raised the deficit by over $2 trillion, not a penny paid for, and it didn't come back with anything. That in fact, that entire $2 trillion, the vast majority went to the top 1/10 of 1% of the American people. 1%, if we just, 1%, the folks in the top 1%, if they just paid their personal income tax the same as it was under President George W. Bush, that would generate $13 billion a year. It would raise the tax from what it is now, 35 to 39%. It's what, it's not like this idea, if you listen to the guy who used to have this job, that somehow we're gouging people. The fact of the matter is, a lot of you, if you're a plumber and a teacher, you're probably paying at 25, 26%. Some of you will be paying higher. But here, look, it's enough to provide for that one change, enough to provide for 2 years free community college for every student in America. Now, people say that one of the purposes of taxes is to also generate growth along with making sure that we can pay for our basic needs. Well, let me ask you, what is more likely to grow the economy and enhance us? Continuing the tax cut at 37% or having to pay 39.5%, generating economic growth because now you have a tax system that will allow millions of students to go to community college. When I was with Barack as vice president, he asked me to do a study, and your sister, Penny Pritzker, was part of my effort to taking care of it, and the effort was simple. We came along and we said, okay, what do we interviewed 347, don't hold me the exact number, of the CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies. Said, what do you need most? You know what they said, almost to a person? I need a better educated workforce. They're not prepared to pay for it. Imagine if we present the world and the nation with a better educated workforce. It helps everybody. The point is, we pay for our entire plan to make the tax system fair for all Americans. It's about time. There's a lot of work ahead of us to finish the job, but we're going to get it done. We're going to reimagine what our economy and our future could be and show the world, just as importantly, we'll show ourselves that democracy can deliver the people of Illinois and the people of America and the world can lead again. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I know that's a boring speech, but it's an important speech. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Appreciate it. And excuse my back. I apologize. I apologize. Thank you.